As most of us in the higher education business know, there's a white paper on higher education doing the rounds. One of the things it recommends for the future of higher education is a teaching excellence framework, which will check that you're being taught properly. It's proving rather difficult to decide how you measure whether you're being taught properly. Should it be the number of first-class degrees a university turns out? Should it be the salaries that graduates earn within 2 or 3 years of their graduation? No pressure.
Good evening, Rowan. It's the 22nd of July 2016 and it's just before midnight. And obviously I'm making you my usual Friday evening video to reassure you I won't be seducing any priests over the weekend, so you can relax. Not even my beloved. Anyway, before I go any further, I want to wish you a happy anniversary. Now, I know you and I have a lot of anniversaries, don't we? That's because you've done so many evil things to me, you see. That's why we've got so many anniversaries. So today is a year since I moved into this flat. So I've been here a whole year in this flat now, and it's all very homely. You know, I've kitted it out nicely, got a lot of my things back from my house. And I shall be getting all of those back before the end of this year, all the rest of my things that I had to leave in my house. So I shall be getting all of those back, although I don't want to move back into my house because I never want to see my neighbours again after the hell that they put me through under the delusion that they were helping me. Stalking me night and day they were, and creating a terrible nuisance on purpose. So I never want to see them again, so I won't be going back there. And in any case, I'll be a bajillionaire and I shall be building my castle and putting a moat round it with sharks in it and a sniper on the roof that can spot Anglican archbishops and psychiatrists at 1,000 paces. I haven't forgotten about that, you know. Because after I've finished suing you and a few psychiatrists, I am indeed going to be a bajillionaire. So that's why I'm going to be able to send you a gold photo frame of me and my beloved when you're in prison. And as I said before, even if you had a penny left after I finished suing you, the state would seize it because you're a terrorist. But you'd be really happy about that anyway, wouldn't you? Because you really love the state and you want the state to have as much power as possible. So you'll be really glad that the state's going to put you in prison and the state's going to seize all your assets. That's just worked out fantastically for you, hasn't it? And you'll be able to pretend you're St Paul in prison because you're completely delusional, and it'll reduce your carbon footprint, and you'll have no property left. And you'll love the poor so much, you'll love being poor, won't you? And you'll have to do an honest job as well instead of talking shit everywhere, which is what you do at the moment. So anyway, we've just, I was actually going to make another video this evening, but yesterday I found another video. We've just played a clip of it now, and this was a speech he gave on the occasion of being awarded an honorary doctorate at York University on the 15th of July, which is just a week ago. So you made this speech a week ago, and you do seem to be teetering on the edge. Now, a lot of people who have known you for years will think that you've recently gone mad. But the truth is that you've always been mad. It's only as you've got more and more stressed as you've realised that all your lies are being found out and all your evil behaviour, and that you're not going to be able to get away with it anymore. The stress of this is causing your innate madness to become apparent. It's not that you weren't mad before, it's just that you were able to hide it better with those masks I was telling you about. And I did mention before that one of the first books written about psychopaths was called The Mask of Sanity. And so you've been wearing a mask of sanity, whereas in fact you've always been insane to the way of thinking of the vast majority of people. So you've just been talking in the clip I've just played about a white paper on higher education that recommends a teaching excellence framework which will check that you're being taught properly. And you say it's proving rather difficult to decide how to measure if you're being taught properly. And then you give a couple of examples. The number of students who get a first, and the second one was the salary they were earning 2 or 3 years after graduating. Well, I've got another idea about how to assess teaching excellence. I mean, someone could monitor people like you, couldn't they, and point out all the crap that you talk, as I've been doing, because we can't really. You're supposed to be a theologian, one of the most brilliant theologians that's ever existed, according to all the propaganda about you. You're an absolute genius, and you can also speak 12 languages, and you know just about everything. And this is in addition to being a very holy and prayerful man, and very moral and all this kind of thing. Well, everything about you, all this propaganda is complete baloney. And, you know, I've given many examples of the way that you've misrepresented Christian doctrine, Christian writers, Christian scripture, and you've done this over and over again. You often say things are the opposite of what they actually are. Well, I have listened to quite a lot of your academic lectures as well. Now, I don't know a great deal about some of the areas that you talk about, but about the areas about which I do know, I know that you make an awful lot of mistakes. And so I'm going to give an example now from a lecture you gave at Cambridge University about Teresa of Avila. Now, Teresa of Avila is one of the most well-known figures in Christian history. I mean, she's not just known in the Catholic Church, she's known widely in the Protestant world as well. She's known very well in the Spanish-speaking world. Her autobiography was the second best selling work of Spanish prose of all time in 1950, and that was after Cervantes' Don Quixote. So she's a very well-known figure, and you gave a lecture about her at Cambridge University in 2015. You gave quite a lot of lectures about her in 2015 because it was the 500th anniversary of her birth in 2015. She was born in 1515. So you gave all these lectures, but this one you gave at Cambridge University, and I'm just going to give an illustration from it of a blatant error you make in this lecture you give about one of the most well-known figures in Christian history. And you're giving this lecture at one of the most prestigious universities in the world, and you're supposed to be some genius of a theologian. In fact, you were made Lady Margaret Professor of Divinity at Oxford University when you were only 36, and this has been heralded wherever you've gone, basically. It certainly was heralded before you when you came to be Bishop of Monmouth in Wales. That was the job that you had previously, Lady Margaret Professor of Divinity at Oxford University. So I'm going to give this example of where you've made this mistake. It's not the only mistake you make in this lecture, but I did do a series of videos about a talk that you gave about Teresa of Avila at Dedham Parish Church in September of 2015. So I'm not going to go through this whole lecture where you make an awful lot of mistakes and assumptions, and it's propagandistic, really, about the Catholic Church in Spain and about the Spanish Inquisition. So I won't go over all that again because I've mentioned these themes before, but I'm just going to play a clip now of what you said in this lecture at Cambridge University in about February 2015, and then I'm going to play a clip from a comment I made on the same mistake that you made when you were speaking about Teresa of Avila at Dedham Parish Church. So I'll just play that now.
She tells us in the autobiography that her own moment of real conversion as a young nun came when she saw a statue in the cloister at Avila of that, it's a familiar late medieval theme, Christ at the pillar, that is, Christ tied up, ready for scourging. And she says that she was so struck by the loneliness and the neediness of the figure that she rediscovered her prayer life, because she felt, he needs me to be there. And I think that particular experience fitted in as it did in her life, because as both a Jewess by family and a woman, to be needed was probably not the first thing that she might have thought about herself. And it's as if she connects that sense of Christ's invitation to minister to him, as if she connects that with being honoured by an invitation from the source of all honour and status and dignity.
So I'm quoting from you now. In her 40s, this is Teresa, in her 40s things began to change again, and she describes once again, very vividly, as she always does, a moment when, in the cloister of the convent, she saw a statue of what's quite a common theme in Spanish religious art, Christ at the pillar. That is, Christ strapped to the pillar, ready to be scourged. And she felt an immediate and powerful sense that she was needed. Here was Christ alone and suffering, and where was she? And she concluded that she was being called simply to be where he was. And that meant a radical rethinking of everything she was taking for granted. So, this refers to an incident that Teresa describes in chapter 39 of her autobiography, although they're hardly recognisable as the same incident. But anyway, here's what she says. Chapter 39, parts 3 and 4. I was once in the deepest distress, because I knew that a person to whom I was under great obligations was about to commit an act highly offensive to God and dishonourable to himself. He was determined upon it. I was so much harassed by this that I did not know what to do in order to change his purpose, and it seemed to me as if nothing could be done. I implored God from the bottom of my heart to find a way to hinder it, but till I found, I could find no relief for the pain I felt. In my distress, I went to a very lonely hermitage, one of those belonging to this monastery, in which there is a picture of Christ bound to the pillar, and there, as I was imploring our Lord to grant me this grace, I heard a voice of exceeding gentleness, speaking as it were in a whisper. My whole body trembled, for it made me afraid. I wished to understand what was said, but I could not, for it all passed away in a moment. This is part 4 of chapter 39 now. When my fears had subsided, and that was immediately, I became conscious of an inward calmness, a joy and delight, which made me marvel how the mere hearing of a voice, I heard it with my bodily ears, without understanding a word, could have had such an effect on the soul. I saw by this that my prayer was granted, and so it was, and I was freed from my anxieties about a matter not yet accomplished, as it afterwards was, as completely as if I saw it done. I told my confessors of it, for I had 2 at this time, both of them learned men, and great servants of God. So why have you given a completely false account of this event then?
Did you just forget it and you made it up?
So it does appear that you actually believe this story that you've told, which is entirely inaccurate. And I would add a little bit more to what I said when I was commenting on this mistake you made when you gave this lecture at Dedham Parish Church last year, that you've entirely you've blown this incident out of all proportion as well in Teresa's life. You've made it seem like this experience that she had, this spiritual experience that she had, was absolutely pivotal in deciding her vocation, which is a very important thing in her case, because she was the first reformer of the Carmelite order and really the founder of the Discalced Carmelites, although they didn't become entirely separate until after her death. But she was the founder of the Discalced Carmelites, so Teresa discovering her vocation and the direction to go in is quite an important thing in Christian history, in Catholic history, in the history of the Carmelite order. She is the founder of the Discalced Carmelites. And some people say that she was the helper of St John of the Cross, and this is an entire reversal of their roles. He was in fact her helper, and without Teresa, St John of the Cross wouldn't have had the life that he had, because he was intending to go and join the Carthusian order when he wasn't happy in the Carmelite order, and Teresa persuaded him to stay, and had it not been for her persuading him to stay and to start reforming the male order of Carmelites, to found the Discalced Carmelite order for males, then his life would have gone in an entirely different direction. He would have never been imprisoned. He started writing his poetry when he was in prison, which is some of the most beautiful poetry that's ever been written in the Spanish language. And so he wouldn't have become the figure that he was in Christian history, probably, if he'd just gone and joined the Carthusians. So Teresa discovering her vocation is quite a fundamental thing in the founding of the Discalced Carmelite order, and on the fact that she had this effect on others of her contemporaries as well. So the fact that you've misrepresented that is in fact phenomenally significant. It's a huge error. It's a staggering error, and you've done it more than once, so I think you even believe the story that you're telling. So anyway, to move on from that, because you were talking about teaching excellence and this white paper on teaching excellence, and then you were saying it was proving rather difficult to decide how to measure if you're being taught properly. And this is the reason why I've given these illustrations, because people being taught by you are not being taught properly, because you're spouting garbage. Basically, the majority of what you say about the things I know about simply isn't true, and sometimes it's the opposite of what's true. And obviously you're driving forward a political agenda as well, as I've also demonstrated. So anyway, you then go on to say in this talk at York University, I suspect that the answer lies in a few words that are conspicuous by their absence from the white paper, and the words that are most vivid in my mind when I think about excellent teaching are imagination, enjoyment, and commitment. So you then say, if in your time at this university you have learnt something about those three things, you'll have learned what a university has to communicate. Imagination, the capacity to say it doesn't have to be like this. And you say this in quite an emotional way. And the capacity to enter into how someone else sees a complex and challenging world. So I'd just like to talk about imagination. I've mentioned you obsessing about imagination before, and actually your imagination is what has got you into the situation that you're in now, because your imagination about me, for example, you were imagining that I was a lesbian, imagining that I was a prostitute, imagining that I was a pre-seducer, and all these kinds of things. It was entirely your fantasy, as I've demonstrated, and I've demonstrated the reason why I think you're having sexual fantasies about me. A couple of videos ago I did that. So you really need to lay off the imagination, don't you, and stick to the facts. It's children who live in these fantasies, and you've never grown out of infancy. So your imagination is the source of all your problems, because you don't know what reality is. And imagination, the capacity to say it doesn't have to be like this. Well, no, it doesn't have to be like this, does it, Rowan? But the problem is that certain psychopathic slimeballs and sexual predators do things like hound a young woman around the country for decades and try to ruin her life everywhere, and then this is how this whole situation has come about. So it didn't have to be like this, but it's actually your behaviour that's made it like this, isn't it? It's not my behaviour, it's your behaviour. No one asked you to come interfering in my life anywhere, did they? Or to tell all these lies about me, or to incite people to treat me in an evil way, or to deliberately traumatise me, to try and bring me under your control. No one forced you to do any of those things, did they? You did them of your own free will. So your imagination has got you into this situation. It's not my imagination, it's not anyone else's imagination, and it's not reality either. So your imagination is the source of your problem. So I don't really understand why you're still lauding it, apart from the fact that you're a psychopath and you never learn. And oh, you also talk about the capacity to enter into how someone else sees a complex and challenging world. Well, I know exactly how you see the world, Rowan, because you're a psychopath and you see it as something to be manipulated to fit into your fantasies, and you express confusion when other people don't behave in the way that you want, and you think that other people are just characters in your novel. You're writing the novel. And you decide on the character and behaviour of people, and you'll do everything you can to force people to conform to your fantasies. So I do certainly have the capacity to enter into how you see a complex and challenging world. Well, it would be a lot less complex without psychopaths like you obfuscating and muddying the waters, wouldn't it? So you say enjoyment, the sense of being overwhelmed. Oh, this is the second word that's missing from the white paper. I don't know if government white papers tend to deal with imagination and enjoyment, to be honest. I haven't read any now I come to think of it, but I would imagine they're sort of more practically orientated. So this is the second word that's missing. Enjoyment, the sense of being overwhelmed, enriched and enlarged by what you're studying. Right. And the third thing is, and commitment, a challenge to put your own security and safety on the line when necessary for the sake of what you've discovered through your imagination and your enjoyment. Well, that's more of your noise pollution, isn't it? So you put your security and safety on the line. My security and safety's been on the line all this time. It is on the line. So I don't really think you should be lecturing me. Why don't you put your security and safety on the line instead of trying to force me to conform to your fantasies about me? why would you be discovering anything through your imagination and enjoyment anyway? That just sounds like sex to me. Is that what you're talking about again? Imagination and enjoyment? I bet you're talking about sexual fantasies. It wouldn't surprise me. Anyway, I'll leave that there for now, and I'm going to make another comment in a minute.
I suspect the answer lies in a few words which are conspicuous by their absence from the white paper. And the words that are most vivid in my mind when I think about excellent teaching are imagination, enjoyment, and commitment. If in your time in this university you have learned something about those three things, you'll have learned what a university has to communicate. Imagination, the capacity to say it doesn't have to be like this, and the capacity to enter into how somebody else sees a complex and challenging world. Enjoyment, the sense of being overwhelmed, enriched, and enlarged by what you're studying, and an appetite that goes with it to go on being enriched and enlarged. And commitment, a challenge to put your own security and safety on the line when necessary for the sake of what you've discovered through your imagination and your enjoyment.
So you say a bit later on, in the wake of nightmare events unfolding yet again in our continent, and I say our continent with forethought, and you're trying to sound like you're quite... I don't really know how to describe it really, but I'm going to show the clip anyway. That you're stating something that isn't obvious to the majority of people, our continent. So you're talking about Europe here, aren't you, and the Brexit vote. And I knew you were dumb, but I didn't know that you were this dumb. But do you know we haven't actually left Europe? Do you know that Britain is still in Europe? Because Europe, you see, is a continent which is a large landmass. We're on the same continental shelf as Europe. We're still Europeans. We haven't left Europe. We haven't sawed off Britain and towed it down to the South Seas. We're still European. We're still part of Europe. We can still travel to Europe. Europeans, other Europeans can still travel here. They can still come and live and work here if they've got a job and a background check and so on. So we haven't actually left Europe. Oh, and we can still import European goods and export goods to Europe. So all of that hasn't changed. What we've left is the European Union, which most people think or thought was an agreement between quite a large number of states in Europe. But in fact, it's a Stalinist dictatorship located in Brussels. So we've left a Stalinist dictatorship, unelected people deciding everything we can do. We've left that. But we haven't left Europe because Europe is a continent and it happens to be where we're situated. So we haven't left Europe. So when you say this, in the wake of nightmare events unfolding yet again in our continent, and I say our continent with forethought, it's still our continent, you moron. Nothing's changed. How could anyone be so dumb? Anyway, you're talking about these nightmare events in Europe. We need to think about how some of those values and some of those visions impact on a world of intense and spiralling violence. A lack of imagination is to be resigned. Oh, you make a mistake here. A lack of imagination, is to be resigned. You make this mistake and you try and recover, and you say to be reconciled, you might almost say, to a situation of ongoing rivalry, struggle and suspicion. That's lack of imagination. So I'm not sure you're talking about Europe there and these bogus attacks that are supposed to be going on. So I don't really know how imagination would help anyway. I just think you're totally mad. And your madness is becoming more apparent by the day. It really is. A situation of ongoing rivalry, struggle, and suspicion. Well, I'm not a rival of yours. You saw me as a rival. That's one of the reasons why you tried to destroy me everywhere, and why you've tried to destroy a number of other people and have succeeded in many cases. So you're the one who's exhibiting all the rivalry, Rowan. I never did anything to you. I'm just pointing out what a psychopathic scumbag you are and what shit you talk about absolutely everything. So I don't need to be a rival of yours because I'm quite all right by myself. I don't need anything from you. I don't want anything to do with you. So I'm not a rival of yours. I'm not even Anglican. I'm not an academic. I don't move in any circles that you move in. So I'm not a rival of yours. I've never been a rival of yours. You perceived me that way, and that's one of the reasons why you went around everywhere trying to destroy me. Because you're terrified of me, because you know I'm very competent and articulate, and that I know what crap you talk, and I can see through all your bullshit, and I know that you're useless, and you realised all that back then. A lack of enjoyment shows itself in the sense that you have to defend all the time your own position, your own security, at the expense of everything and everyone else. Well, that's what you do, isn't it, Rowan? I don't really know what enjoyment has got to do with it, to be honest. And I'm not defending anything at the expense of everything and everyone else. You know, I'm being harassed by other people continuously and stressed out and oppressed by them, sticking their noses in my business. I don't want anything to do with these people. So the expense of everything and everyone else, well, showing you up for the Illuminati shill and the psychopath that you are isn't really at the expense of everything and everyone else, is it? In fact, it's to their benefit. So you're the one who is defending your position, and you've done that all your life. You've defended your position and your security at the expense of everything and everyone else. And I'm paying the price of this. You've never paid the price of anything. You've just trampled over everybody, ruined people, driven people to suicide, started smear campaigns, promoted incompetent people on purpose, and all this kind of thing. So it's you that behaves in this way. So you better not be saying that about me. Not that I care what you say anyway, because you talk nothing but shit. And it's not so much a problem of lack of commitment, but of the wrong kind of commitment. Commitment to defending only what you understand and only the people who are like you. Right, well, I understand quite a lot of things. You don't seem to understand anything at all. You certainly don't understand me, because you keep trying to push my buttons and I keep telling you I haven't got any, so don't bother. So, talking about people who are like you, well, you don't even try and defend people who are only people who are like you, do you? You only defend yourself. You're the only person you care about. You don't even care about your own children, because you've sold their future with your globalist conspiracy. So you don't even care about them. So you don't even defend only people who are like you. You only defend yourself. And I would like to point out, in relation to the Brexit vote, that I have travelled extensively in Europe on my own, which I've mentioned before, and I also speak 2 other European languages, one of which I'm fluent in, Spanish. I also speak French and have a diploma of higher education in French, which I also did in evening classes at the same time when I was doing a degree in Spanish and working full time. So you didn't go around trying to destroy me everywhere because you thought I was useless and I was no good. One of the reasons is that you thought that I was a terrible threat to you, which indeed I am, although I didn't know all of this was going on, but I can see straight through you, and I know, and I knew way back in the 90s in Wales, that you were not the person you were cracked up to be. So you go on to say, in the face of violence like that, these values take on a new edge and a new urgency. We need to go from a university like this with a new kind of commitment, a passionate commitment to the good of all, the interdependent good and well-being of all. Get the plug for collectivism in there, won't you? And you say, carrying with us the recognition that all real achievement comes from cooperation, not from struggle and rivalry. Well, you're the one who exhibits all the rivalry. Rowan, you're even a rival of your own children. You have the cheek to go around calling me a prostitute everywhere and smearing me, which, even if it was true, being a prostitute only involves selling your own body, whereas you've sold your soul. You've sold everyone else as well. Well, we don't belong to you. We don't belong to you for you to be selling. You go sell your body if you want, but don't be selling all the rest of us as well. You've sold us all, you conniving psychopathic scumbag. So don't give me the benefit of all crap when the only person you ever look out for is yourself, not even your own children. Anyway, I'm going to make another brief comment in a minute.
In the wake of nightmare events unfolding yet again in our continent, and I say our continent with forethought, we need to think about how some of those values and some of those visions impact on a world of intense and spiralling violence. The lack of imagination is to be resigned, to be reconciled, you might almost say, to a situation of ongoing rivalry, struggle, and suspicion. That's lack of imagination. A lack of enjoyment shows itself in the sense that you have to defend all the time your own position, your own security, at the expense of everything and everyone else. And it's not so much a problem of lack of commitment as of the wrong kind of commitment. Commitment to defending only what you understand and only the people who are like you. In the face of violence like that, these values take on a new edge and a new urgency. We need to go from a university like this with another kind of commitment, a passionate commitment to the good of all, the interdependent good and well-being of all, carrying with us the recognition that all real achievement comes from cooperation, not from struggle and rivalry.
I just want to make the comment that you're making this speech at a graduation ceremony, so you've got young people mainly in their early 20s graduating from university, and you wish them every good luck in the future. And I'd just like to say, if they've got a psychopathic sexual predator on their tail, hounding them around wherever they go and trying to ruin their lives, they're going to need more than good luck, aren't they? And that's what I had in you, you disgusting little pervert. Anyway, I'm going to say a word about my beloved in a minute, and then that's it.
I wish you every good luck, every blessing, every success in the lives ahead of you.
So I've calmed down somewhat now because I was just thinking of my beloved for a moment. And I just want to mention once again how absolutely gorgeous he is. I've seen him this week and he's just so wonderful. He's definitely the man for me. And he's so sexy and everything about him is just fantastic. He's really nothing like you at all. And I did mention that he's a gog, didn't I? Do you know he's fluent in Welsh as well, unlike you. You do speak Welsh to some extent, but I've heard you speak Welsh and it's obvious you're not fluent. It sounds like you're reading out a composition as a schoolboy or something. Anyway, I won't say any more now, but of course, oh yes, I did mean to mention that I did have a word with my beloved about waving the flags on the video, but he did remind me that actually more people in Wales, a higher proportion of people in Wales voted to leave the European Union than in England and in the UK as a whole. So he suggested that he could wave a Welsh flag as well as a Union flag. So that's what we're going to do. He's going to wave the Welsh flag. He'll have to hold them both in one hand, obviously, because his other arm will be round me, and I'll be waving the Union flag in my other hand, and we'll both be gazing adoringly at each other. And we'll be outside your college in Cambridge, because I'll have got your job by then. I've nearly finished my CV. And I thought it would also be quite nice if we had an EU flag, a European Union flag, burning in the background. But I'll have to do a risk assessment about that first, because I don't know if it's very feasible to be burning flags on university campuses. So I'll have to do a risk assessment, because as you will remember, I am actually also a qualified health and safety assessor and trainer as well, which is how I knew with all certainty within half an hour of realising that 9/11 was an inside job. I knew that you were lying about it. And if you hadn't sabotaged my hopes of being ordained in the Anglican Church, then I wouldn't have known that, would I, straight away? So that was all your fault as well. So there you are. Anyway, I'll leave it there for now, but don't worry, I've already got another video planned that I was going to make tonight, but I'll leave that until Sunday. So you've got that to look forward to. And obviously I'll be uploading my video of me arresting you at Warwick University in the morning. So, hasta la próxima.
Don't try to change me, you're wasting your time.